Hey, it's Mazzy here, and welcome to a charmingly whimsical vinyl thread. I'm kind of whispering and doing this low voice today because this is an ongoing thread in the YouTube vinyl community world, created by Alan in the United Kingdom, the Static Traveler and Puppet Master. You might have seen several of these videos around, and he put together a series of 10 questions to showcase a very whimsical, ethereal, childlike series of records from our collection. So, Alan and everyone watching, without further ado, I'll go through the questions and I'll showcase some records from my collection that I chose based on the 10 questions. Number 1, show a record with something related to dreams. Now, dreams, that could be anything, right? You could show any record in your collection. You could show a collection about love and lust and vacations and food and travel and all kinds of things, right? Gandharva by Beaver and Krause. This came out in 1971 on Warner Brothers Records. This is a very dreamy album, ahead of its time. Maybe for someone of my age, 1971, I would be 16, 17. But I actually bought all of Beaver and Krause's records as they came out. Warner Brothers was one of those labels that it was so creative. And even if the record doesn't totally work that they put out, they're really interesting. Now, I like these records. Beaver and Krause were early Moog synthesizer creators, programmers, musicians of sorts. And they actually came about originally because during the 1967, I think at the Monterey Pop Festival, they had a booth there showcasing early Moog synthesizers. And those of you who know Robert Moog and the Moog synthesizer, George Harrison was an early adopter or bought one. I think it was Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees Headquarters, the Monkees album, as one of the early uses of the Moog synthesizer. This was recorded at Coast Recorders in San Francisco, their Bay Area outfit. Also at Grace Cathedral, the amazing Grace Cathedral on Nob Hill across from the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. Beautiful, beautiful historic church on Nob Hill. I just think this dream-like cover is pretty gorgeous, pretty wonderful, and of a time, yes, but you know, before computers, a lot of montage artwork. I love this. A lot of synthesizer work. They go into, actually, after the initial opening of Soft White, like a less than 1 minute piece of ambient. A lot of it's ambient, but then they get into this thing with a great snappy blues guitar from Mike Bloomfield and Ronnie Montrose. So they really use a lot of the Bay Area musicians of the time. Jack Nitzsche, who you may know, who worked extensively with Neil Young and put together the soundtrack for Performance with some great music. They did some soundscapes that were going to be included, and may have some of them included for the soundtrack of Performance, and they're on here too. Clyde King, the great soul R&B vocalist, does some ambient vocals, I believe, in Grace Cathedral. So there's a mix of, there's actually a Jerry Mulligan By Your Grace tune that they sort of cover in their own way, but very dream-like record in some cases, with spurts of psychedelia and a lot of ambiance and a lot of effects. Gandharva, Beaver and Krause, I love their records. Second question, show a record with sweets, cakes, desserts on cover. Well, I'm showing the wedding album. No, not on the cover, but what's great about this amazing box set, avant-garde, conceptual piece of music, and this was sort of celebrating their marriage on the island of Gibraltar, John and Yoko, the wedding. But what you get in this box, not only is a book, a record, posters, all kinds of things, and this is what you get. Bagism. You get a slice of John and Yoko's wedding cake. How delicious is that? Black and white, minimal, conceptual, beautifully photographed. Oh, an actual slice of John and Yoko's wedding cake from 1969. Number 3, show us a fantastical item of transport, spaceship, trains, submarines, etc. I'm going with the Bebop Deluxe album from 1977. English outfit. This is a live record with an EP, Life in the Air Age. Side 2 EP, Shine, double record. When it came out originally, this is how it came out on a white vinyl. So, there wasn't a lot of colored vinyl. Now everything is friggin' colored vinyl variants. But this cover photograph, obviously, it's from a clip from Metropolis, the silent, amazing motion picture. And then, of course, in the 70s, there was a version of Metropolis that Giorgio Moroder did the soundtrack to. So, Bebop Deluxe, Life in the Air Age. For question number 3, fantastical item of transport, spaceship, trains, submarines, etc. Futuristic. I mean, there you go. Look at these great clips. Wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself. Okay, next question. Show a record with a fantasy world cover. I'm showing 2. HMS Donovan, 1971. The Beatles, the Moostie songs. This is basically Beatles ballads. It came out in the UK. This is a Dutch copy. This record never came out in the US. This was issued in 1980. And what's interesting about it, the cover art for both these is the same artist. It's John Patrick Byrne, or some call him John Byrne, Patrick Byrne, depending on, he was a writer and artist. And this original painting was commissioned, that might have been the Beatles album, A Dollhouse, in 1968. Well, A Dollhouse was the album that became, as we know it now, the Beatles, self-titled, which now we call the White Album. This was the artwork because that album was possibly going to be called A Dollhouse. And the band Family that same year turned out, put an album out called The Dollhouse, so the Beatles scrapped that. So this may have been the cover, but it was used in 1980. Never came out in the United States. It's a fantastic, moody comp. UK cover, I believe, obviously it says different title and not in Dutch, and has a blue rim rather than the gold rim, like that. And HMS Donovan, 1971 cover, one of the second double album Donovan ever put out, and another one of his children's records. This record, again, never came out in the US. I finally found this after literally a decade looking for it. But look at that beautiful artwork. Beautiful design. Love it, love it, love it. John Patrick Byrne's cover art for Donovan, HMS Donovan. Next one, show a record with an outer space motif or theme. I'm going jazz here, is Lou Donaldson, Takes Off. This is right in there with the space races. Came out in 1958 with Donald Byrd, Curtis Fuller, Sonny Clark, George Joyner, Art Taylor. Blue Note 1591. You know, great post-bop work. Opening track is called Sputnik, so you know where this was coming from right when it came out. Show a TV show record, preferably a whimsy fantasy program. I'm the Walrus, that segment from this Magnum Mystery Tour, originally shown on the BBC on Boxing Day in black and white. This is the German Horror Zoo cover, which is more fantastic in a way in terms of the purples. I do like the American cover. You know, it came out as an EP in the UK, but the album and this Horror Zoo German version is the one with all stereo. First time all the songs on side 2 were in all stereo, but Whimsical with the walrus outfits, and I'm the Walrus, No You're Not, said Little Nicola, and all that wonderful brouhaha. Of course, the magical the magical mystics in the clouds. There's a lot of like stoner stuff going on in this, and this is a TV show that was totally whimsical and fanciful, and really kind of bombed when it came out, and it's still problematic for some people. Very surreal, Fellini-like. But you got those magicians in the clouds, excuse me, the Beatles, the German Horzu version of Magical Mystery Tour. Show a record with a cartoon cover. I mean, I could have picked so many of the Flaming Lips. This is their volume 1, only one so far, of their greatest hits. Volume 1 with, of course, Yoshimi Battles, the Pink Robots. All their stuff is very whimsical. Their music is psychedelic, whimsical, electronic. Their covers are psychedelic, great, just intense color smashes all over. Love their music. The music sort of sometimes there's a sameness to it, but when it clicks, man, it really clicks. And this is a nice comp. The actual Yoshima Battles album, I don't have on vinyl, but it's a wonderful cover. It would have been great. So many, I almost picked the Super Furry Animals for this because they use a lot of these cartoony covers on their albums, but I went with Flaming Lips for this one. Next one is show a record related to childhood, books, plays, etc. It really depends what you're defining as a child and what age group. And I'm going back to 1971 yet again. For now, I got in 1971. And that is A Child's Garden of Grass. Somewhat of a supposed comedy album. It's one of those comedy albums that's not funny unless you're stoned. It's a potpourri 1971 of a pre-legalization comedy. Well, did I think this was funny? I don't even know. Jacques Holtzman, obviously the founder of Elektra Records, kind of oversaw this. William S. Harvey, the art director, the creative director at Elektra Records, sort of put this together. He actually worked on the covers for the first several Doors albums for Elektra Records. What's funny about my copy, look at this. First of all, there's a fold out. This is a big deal in 1971. Again, I was, 15, 16 years old, 17 years old maybe almost, with my Maslow imprint. But this didn't come in the album. This was California Marijuana Initiative, Yes on 19. This is a bumper sticker that I actually had in the early 70s. And for whatever reason, I placed it inside my copy of this album. So it's kind of an artifact, right? Archival artifact. Children, careful. And now it's legal, so I don't know, do we throw this album away? Next question, show a record with angels, fairies, nymphs, creatures of folklore, etc. I'm going in an artsy way here. I'm going with an album I've showed on my channel before, and this is Tony Williams, a jazz drummer. In 1985 to 92, 93, he did a series of records for Back on Blue Note, where he composed it. I'm very proud of this record because a photographer I represented, Michelle Clement, created this. Not your typical angel, but Tony gave Michelle Clement, the photographer, the album title, Angel Street, and allowed Michelle to do whatever she wanted to do. Now, those of you who are photography buffs, and if you're not, I'm going to explain this to you a little bit. This is pre-Photoshop. This is 1986, 37, 38. When Michelle was using Polaroid Type 55 film, 4x5 film, she would shoot that in black and white. Polaroid was originally used as a proofing film, but a lot of photographers, even early on when Type 55 came out, but in the 80s, late 80s, mid 80s, it was really popular into the early 90s to use it as the final. You can pull it back, you get a negative from Polaroid film, and you could print from it. So Michelle would do this series, again, pre-Photoshop, where we would sandwich together. She did a series of nudes of this woman, body shots, and a series of different flowers, sandwich the Polaroid negatives together, and in the darkroom, she'd do a series of prints. She did a whole variety of prints. I have a large 20 by 24 version of this photograph, a fiber-based version, which is just stunningly beautiful. But she did sepia toning on this. This was not tinted later from the designer. This was actually the way she printed it. She did selenium toning, which is more of a magenta in that case. Different types of tonings. Obviously, it was changed In the back here, the designer did shift it. This is a designer named Tom Bonaro who did this cover, and I think it's just beautiful type. This is around the type. This kind of style was happening a lot. Someone very famous, a designer, Von Oliver in the UK, 4AD, was doing that for 4AD Records. But there was a series of designers on the West Coast, David Carson in Southern California, Tom Bonaro in the Bay Area, and many others around the country, obviously, doing things like this with minimal type treatments, tiny type treatments, which works on vinyl. But this is a time when CDs were happening too, so it's more problematic, I think, on the CD. But I just think this is one of the most beautiful covers in my collection. I'm very biased, but I just love this cover. So that's a Angel Street. I love that. And finally, show a record whimsically related to death and or something with a grotesqueness on the cover. Chavez Ravine, Ry Cooder's epic sort of biograph about what happened in Chavez Ravine in Los Angeles. And this says it all. You have sort of the Day of the Death, Dia de Muertos, skeleton driving a bulldozer tractor, bulldozing homes in Chavez Ravine. Chavez Ravine in Los Angeles is where they tore down all these houses of migrant or farm workers, locals, Mexican families, and built Dodger Stadium. And he does sort of this bio song of Latin music of the time, everything from Mexican to Cuban, because all these Latin families, and it's got almost like an historic overview with some actually singers of the day, musicians. What's interesting about this, talks about flying saucers, so that can bring in the space age question earlier in the same video, in the same record. But there you go. Interesting record, interesting listen. Ry Cooder did a trilogy of records that are more historically based about a scene, and something that it means a lot to him. And this is a really interesting record. It's not that your normal listen, but it's stunningly beautiful and wonderful from my point of view. And that's it. I ended on a serious note there. Alan, thank you for hosting. I appreciate it. We'll get whimsical now, and Mazzy loves you in my 60s, and Mazzy loves you when I was 16 years old.